Pablo Eisenberg. Uh, this interview was a posthumous epitaph of Pablo Eisenberg after he died. It was found at NPR, and the interviewer was Sacha Pfeiffer. Pablo Eisenberg was an American scholar, social justice advocate, and a tennis player. He was born in Paris on July 1st, 1932, and he came to the U.S. in 1939 when he was 7 years old. He was a graduate of Princeton University and Merton College in Oxford, and he received a German Marshall Funds Fellowship in 1989 to study the nonprofit sectors in Great Britain, the Netherlands, and France. He was also a nationally ranked tennis player who made it to Wimbledon 4 times and won the gold medal at the 1953 Games in Israel. After serving in the U.S. Army in World War II, Eisenberg spent 3 years in Africa as a foreign service agent with the U.S. Information Agency. And after being discharged from the Army, he became a visiting professor at the University of Notre Dame and New Orleans University. He was also a senior fellow at the Georgetown University's Public Policy Institute, and concurrently and slightly before, he served for 23 years as executive director of the Center for Community Change in Georgetown. Eisenberg was a founder of the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy and was president of the Friends of Vista. He served on the boards of multiple nonprofit organizations, including the Milton Eisenhower Foundation and the University College of Citizenship and Public Service, and was a citizen and trustee of the Citizen Funds. In 1989, he received the award for Outstanding Achievement in Public Service from the Alliance for Justice and the 1998 John Gardner Leadership Award. In 2004, he also received an honorary Doctor of Laws degree from Princeton University. He was, to every single one of his colleagues and acquaintances, a pain in the neck, as said by many of his friends during his funeral. He was an incredibly outspoken critic of donors such as the Gates and some of the richest donors to many of the foundations that he chaired, and was often said to say as much to their faces. He referred to modern philanthropy as a popularity contest and called the donors attention hogs. This was because during that time, people were often donating to the attention-grabbing foundations, such as Stopping the War or Saving the Pandas, nothing homegrown, nothing that would have tangible effects on the people at home. And Pablo often found that as disgraceful because he felt that if the people were taken care of at home, then the problems that grew as a result of people not being taken care of would be addressed by a healthier and more stable populace. The main takeaways from the podcast were often these 3 points. Donations aren't equal. And by an example Pablo gave was a donation to Harvard is not the same as a donation to a community college. Harvard has too much money and doesn't often need your donation. Well, a donation to a community college can often make or break many students' academic careers. Donors shouldn't be held accountable for what they don't support. Pablo believed that to donate responsibly meant that you should donate something that actually makes a difference to your account. He often said this to the Gates, and he often brought up this point to them as well, because he believed that the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation had enough money to address poverty in the United States as well as malaria in Africa. And he often said to them that they had more than enough money to address both and still live very, very affluently. Pablo also believed that effective support isn't merely monetary. And what he meant by this is that donating money to an organization does not do as much to aid as the donor would believe. Most such foundations often don't have effective policing mechanisms or are not often transparent enough, and it's never a clear shot as to where your money is going. He believed that effective donations meant donating to foundations that weren't necessarily in the public eye, but were very effective at what they did and addressed important problems affecting society. Um, One of his biggest talking points was the stinginess of the rich, um, where a billionaire would donate maybe a couple $1,000s at a time, or maybe a couple million, and he often felt that unless you could feel the impact of your donation on your own wallet, it didn't really make much of a difference because it was essentially buying forgiveness from the populace for your own sins. He was also often infuriated by the condescension of the donors. He used to say that the people who would speak for the rich and cry out for the poor and often say about how much they donated would absolutely be disgusted to stand in the same room as the people that they were discussing. He believed that helping people was the biggest goal of any organization, and that other concerns would be taken care of by a rejuvenated, vulnerable class. This meant that organizations such as Saving the Pandas or Saving the Dolphins would be better served by having a populace that was able to hold steady jobs, had access to more food, and that by doing so, the animals being affected by pollution and other man-made natural disasters would be affected as well. He was a large proponent of government-enforced transparency as well, because he realized often that the laws in place for nonprofits were not necessarily equitable. And as a donor, he realized that one would never know if the money ever made it to the intended recipients. He also often despaired of the lack of journalism on nonprofits, as he believed that if it was attention grabbing enough, journalism would never cover anything going on in the nonprofit sector, whether it was good or bad. A few conclusions to be taken from this. Responsible donation always means doing research on the organization being donated to. Always make sure that the organization is reputable and transparent, and the story of the organization should be popular to catch attention.